In 2011, when we were here in Timaru, Kris and a number of other people in succession led a movement, or began a movement, to get the next generation involved in deer farming and involved in the industry particularly. So we thought it might be useful to get 7 years on those perspectives from the people that started the program and those that have encouraged to come into it. So all yours, Kris. Thanks.
Thanks, Tony. What I'll do, I'll just ask the panel to come up while I'm introducing them. Basically, I've organised a next generation panel of South Canterbury, North Otago deer farmers that are either been to a next generation event or about to. So if those guys and girls could come up now, that'd be cool. What I'm trying to do, or what we'd sort of aim for, is if we could have a roaming microphone out there. These guys are going to ask some questions, or what their burning issues are, from the younger perspective. I'm not going to preempt what they're going to ask, but some of the guidelines that I gave them were what could the industry do better, what do they want to see more of, and maybe what do they want to see less of. So where appropriate, we will try and get answers from either DINZ Board or DFA or you as the public out there, and we'll just see how we get on. So has anyone, have we got a microphone there? Cool. How do we turn it on? Yep. So I'll pass over to them to introduce themselves, tell you guys why they're here, and that's because I asked them on Sunday, actually. That's the answer there. And they were the ones that answered their telephone, which was, they didn't obviously have a caller ID. But they may tell you a little bit about what space they're in as far as their home activities and what part of farming they're involved in. So I'll pass over to Abby for a start, since you're right there.
Thanks so much. Hi, I'm Abby France, and I probably sit up here with two hats. I farm with Kris in Great Southern Deer Farms, and unfortunately for you guys, you've probably seen me sitting up on this stage before. And then I also sit here in my role with FMG. I'm a rural manager here in South Canterbury, so heaps of you in this room are actually people that make me cups of tea on a semi-regular basis. So thanks for that too.
James Pearce from a deer farming family out at Pleasant Point. I've just started out a new farm with Velvet Focus.
Brad Travis. I moved down about 8 years ago from the North Island originally, and now base myself at Hunter Hills down in Makiki, and I manage the deer operation for the Fraser family, which consists of 1,500 velveteen stags, and run a trophy hunting operation, and about 500 breeding hinds, so yeah.
Mark Tapley, Peel Forest Estate. Where I start? We're sort of three different hats there: trophy, velvet, and venison. We're a stud farm, so it's quite intensive. So I'm involved in the breeding, the sales, marketing, and all the recording that goes on there. Yes, that's about it, yeah.
Tim Turner, you probably all know about me anyway from the health review, so there's probably not much more to say.
Okay, anybody like to put their hand up and kick off with a question or a comment? Brad? Man, you get a beer.
As Kris said, he gave us quite late notice, but I do have a few questions here. Unsure if Reese is here or not. As a marketing director and that, how are you trying to achieve and keep prices at where they are, and to go forward from today, and to help push New Zealand to a better place?
Just an start. No.
Yeah, Reese just... Is that working? Yep. Reese just disappeared, so I'll carry the can for Reese.
Good
So
on you,
thanks,
Dan.
Reese. You're getting a beer. So I guess he's going to go through our strategy on velvet marketing tomorrow. But the issues are that it's always been an up and down business. So throughout the history of velvet, people who've been in it for a while know that it actually traditionally goes up and down. And the last few years of it being stable and good, apart from last year, are the unusual part. So what we need to do is keep that unusual going. That's created partly by competition between Korea and China as our markets, but most latterly is supported by our move into healthy foods. And that move into healthy foods is going great in Korea, but will plateau there at some point. And what we need to do next is find a way into healthy foods in China. So that's Reese's presentation for tomorrow, done and dusted, guys.
I'll keep going. With saying that, do you have a confident relationship with all the overseas markets and coordinators to see a for stable future?
No.
That's not the answer I wanted to hear.
The honest truth is that the velvet markets for their first 35 years were a commodity trade. So you dealt in a high value, low volume commodity with some traders whose business it was to trade commodities, and traders make their money out of arbitrage, about buying low and selling high. So that's kind of not where we see the industry being in the long term, which is why we think the future is in large companies that have a brand at stake and want a long-term stable supply relationship with some reliable high integrity partners in New Zealand. So that's where we want to get things. But if we said it's all done and dusted and job done, we'd be lying to you.
And as a board, how are you trying to attract the next generation along?
I'm going to hand that one over.
I didn't tell some of the board members that there might have been a few posing questions, but that's the element of surprise, I guess.
Kris, why don't you take the next generation one?
Yeah, well, I guess from my point of view, it's originally DFA and still obviously DFA focused, but on DINZ Board, we felt there was a bit of a gap between the, say, without offending anybody, the silverbacks and the next generation, and so that's where the next generation really came from, to try and promote that, to get people to these types of events and see that it's not all bad, and that we can get, the youth and enthusiasm in around DFA and the DINZ Board, and hopefully we've made a difference. And I think these guys are the next guys to possibly step up and do that. Some will, some won't, but they're all in deer farming, and that's an awesome start. So that's my probably 2 cents worth.
Yeah. Well, I'll come up on stage and add another 2 cents, so that say that. Holy crap! The P2P focuses on next generation development a little bit as well. It doesn't call it that, but it's about engaging with people out there in the world. And I guess the best recent example of that is the thing we've called the Big Deer Tour, where we've tried to identify what we think are the next set of agricultural leaders who are still finishing their education, their university training, and trying to round them up and take them on a whirlwind fun time tour of the deer industry, so that even if they don't become deer farmers, and they probably won't, they'll be the CEOs or chairmen of the future, but at least they'll have a soft spot in their heart for the deer industry at some point down the track. I guess the other thing that Tony's been working really hard on, on behalf of DFA and DINZ, has been to put some training opportunities back together for, at the vocational level. So ITO training courses, which have kind of ceased to exist, and then Tony's put back, along with Phil from Deer Industry News, has put together some really good training materials, got them approved by the ITO, so now there are training options for young people there. So we're trying, but it's little toe in the water stuff, basically.
Yeah, so that's good. That's good to hear. And but I guess a big barrier is the increasing age of farmers and the struggle for young people to move into farm ownership. So what's the DINZ Board doing in that respect?
We'll try and bring the prices down. No, that one's too hard for me. I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for that, and we don't have a strategy to facilitate, farm ownership for young people. I'm sorry, but that's the honest answer, and it's the honest answer is it's not a deer industry problem. It's right across agriculture, and I know it worries people greatly. But one thing that I've heard about this conversation and discussion really recently about has been succession planning workshops, where people have started having the conversation between the parents' generation and the kids' generation about how's this going to work, because I'd really love to run a farm and own a farm, but with the asset value at the moment, it's just not feasible. And I don't know the answer, and there's probably not one answer that applies to everyone, but you've got to start having the conversation early on, I think, before push comes to shove, would be one tiny little bit of advice.
Beef and lamb are holding a workshop session on the red meats before exactly.
Well, we are too, Tim. And Amy sent out invitations to everyone.
Could I get a show of hands? Not that I'll be able to see it, but who was at the Methven conference? Because I guess that's when, that I can remember us starting the conversation in and around succession, and we've tried to build on that. And I know that some of the people that are on the stage were at that day with the next generation then, and they asked the question to you guys then: how do we get involved more, and what pathways are there? So I sort of do put that out to you guys as much as the DINZ Board as well, because there's got to be some give and take and open up to new ideas and new, as I said before, that youth and enthusiasm to come and help drive your business if you're sort of getting on towards that, looking at either younger family members coming through or someone else to help drive your business forward. So I don't know if you want to comment on that, Abby?
Not really.
Chris, I'm happy to say something about that, because come up here and get a microphone. I'm very happy to say something about the opportunities, because I believe that there's some huge opportunities, and not only in deer farming but also in sheep and beef. And I think it's up to, and we need initiatives from people like yourselves who actually understand the business, understand what drives the business, where the money's generated, what sort of capital is involved, and then you've not got to think laterally in terms of working with partners. And I think there's, and I'm talking about farm owners. So there's opportunities for leasing, there's opportunities for shared partnerships, there's opportunities for creating grazing companies and a leg up. And I think, and I've seen it on a number of occasions very successfully, where if the person trying to get into the industry has the right attitude towards it, that the farmer will generally give you a pretty good deal in terms of starting to create some equity. So I think to say it's difficult. It's never ever been easy. If you look at agricultural papers from maybe 50 years ago, they were complaining then that it was too hard to get into farming. Nothing's changed. Our earnings have lifted, but I think it's a matter of really sitting down and thinking about it, working through it.
Probably building on that from our personal experience, is there anything out there, probably possibly a DINZ Board thing as well, around supporting the new entrants to farming, exactly as you say, creating those examples that people can use? Because I know from our personal experience, you go to a bank and say that you're going into a deer farm and they go, So there aren't the resources to put those business structures together, especially around budgeting and those sort of things in the industry that are specific to deer. It was extremely hard when you're not in a box, because there just wasn't the information. We basically had to go and create it ourselves, didn't we?
I'll answer that as well. I think that there's no specific strategy or support from the board, but in actual fact, what Dan's just said as part of the P2P program has been trying to get those people who support the farming industry, the bank managers, the farm consultants, the bankers, and particularly a lot of them don't seem to understand the deer farming part of it, and they only want to know one thing, and that's numbers. And I think that, and so there's been part of that program, that advisors program, which was started running, I think it was last year, was the beginning of last year was the first one, and there's more coming up. It's going to create the opportunity for those people you are dealing with to get the right answers. And I think that if you're really sure of your own numbers yourself and understand it properly, it puts you in a far better position in terms of negotiating with those people.
But it goes back to what I sort of asked for, stability in the industry, I guess, on the velvet market. Like 5 years ago, I went to 4 different banks, and I walked out pretty disheartened in the industry because I didn't have a stable sort of fixed price on velvet and venison, like on a year to year, because like you don't get the prices. So I'm sort of guessing, aiming like for a stability or like a long-term price, like not long-term, but sort of 3 to 5 year deal, like that we're trying to get back from the market, so we can go to the banks and have confidence in saying like this is what we're getting in return. But that's sort of the DINZ board. But yeah, so
I just think that, you know, deer farming's really good at the moment. Prices of venison's excellent. Velvet's great as well. I think we've got to be a bit conscious that we don't price ourselves out of the market. You know, what if the venison price keeps going up and velvet keeps going up? So, you know, sort of like to hear some strategies or whatever on how we can not price ourselves out of the market and keep that good sustainable price, but not blow out of the water, and all of a sudden we're going to go, you know, our ass is going to drop out of it again.
Yeah, and on that, I mean, the current price of venison and velvet sustainable? I mean, inevitably the national herd will grow because it's a good thing to be in, which is great, but is the marketing and P2P initiatives enough and fast enough to maintain the schedules as the herd grows? Because at the end of the day, the shrink the supply until the demand makes the price go up thing is not something that we can roll out twice in a row when our industry is the size that it is. So what are we doing to give the likes of us, who are the next people, to own these farms a bit more security long term, even at 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, like I think New Zealand's got a really unique story to tell. I'm not sure, you know, with venison and velvet, possibly, you know, when we're doing our marketing, we're looking forward to hearing marketing strategies tomorrow. They've done a great job up till now, but the New Zealand story is paramount to our product, and I think that's really what we need to be pushing forward now. We're a unique country with unique product, and that's how we can maintain our prices.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I think our scenario now is quite different from what it's been in the past, and that's due to the Savannah appellation. You know, we're now sort of 20 years on. We've diversified that market out of being so reliant on Germany for the venison. Markedly, in fact, you know, to see there's more chilled stuff going into USA. So I think it's not just about shrinking the business supply demand. Sure, that's certainly helped the figures go up in the last bit. We talked about, and I might steal someone's thunder here, but the pet food, increase in pet food demand from the US has added over $1 to the schedule just as we speak at the moment. That diversification's also happened in the velvet, so we're not reliant on just one one country that's taking it all, and I think we've got to do a better job, and it's not only you guys, but us as farmers, do a better job at telling the banks all that story and that good news story, and have a bit of stuff on paper and a good plan going forward, and you can only do your budgets to what you can what you can expect or what you should expect. But at the end of the day, it's going to be very hard to get any 3-year contracts out, particularly on velvet, one would think. Not to say it can't be done, but you can only go to your bank with what you've been advised and what you can sort of see out in the market. So,
Can I just add to that, Chris? And Amy's doing a side project at the moment as well on gross margins and some solid figures, industry figures that we can use as a toolbox to take to bankers and better tell our story and better inform ourselves, because I think what was said earlier, that confidence and knowledge is probably the biggest restraints, and if we can get those behind us and take other people with us, that'll help grow the industry as well.
thanks, Grant. We're probably just about got to wrap up, so is there any more? Got one more down the back, sorry,
Look,
can't see.
Yeah, just a few years ago, I think it was in Methven, and we had the first Next Generation there, and I'm being asked what their expectation was, and they said the venison schedule, they wanted double figures, they wanted 10 and a 12, and I thought, some of you guys are having a wee fiddle with yourself. But look, it's come true, but you're sitting there and you're saying, look, we want an expectation. Just have a look at where the milk price was a couple of years ago. It was $4, and a few years before that it was $8. Land price last year was $5, and it's $7.40. There's no such thing as stability. You're reliant on it. So really, just if you go to the bank, go there with a comparative budget and show them this is what could happen to lamb, this is what could happen to beef, or whatever. I remember we did a budget on buying a bull farm, and it was $3, and the banker said, remember that last year it was $1.60. So there's all those expectations. So really, you've got to be prepared when the price asks up. You've got to knuckle down.
Should we always be comparing with commodity products? Should we always be comparing with commodity products?
No, you shouldn't be comparing with commodity prices, because that's why I went deer farming, because I could have never afforded to buy a farm if I was farming sheep or beef. So that doesn't, I don't think that you should not aspire to have a better price, but just remember that to particularly with velvet, to try and predict the price way out, it's not going to happen.
Okay, anything final words from anybody?
Yeah, I just got a
James.
question. I'll pose a question to the panel. I have to make a few notes. So if you youngsters could sort of tell me your thoughts on your pathway you would favour from Next Gen to DFA, and also attending this conference in the future, then progressing into the future people owning, running and leading this industry into the 2050 era. Because you've sort of asking us, but you guys have got to come up with some answers as well.
I like what you did there, Dave. You sort of spun it round on them, and I didn't say that they were going to get questions. So, the possum in the headlights, or with the dog.
Just a general conversation between themselves, and then give us some ideas.
Yeah, I guess it's one of the things that I think about a bit is we've got 60 odd people going to Next Generation, and they really enjoy that, and it's about 30 new ones and 30 that have been to it before, so about 50%. How do we get those guys and girls to move from that to turning up to our industry conference or any of those other events without being, telling them to turn up? How do we make them want to turn up and start taking on some of those roles and driving forward with their youth and enthusiasm and their ability to ask questions?
Yeah, you look around the room. There's not a lot of young people here.
I'd like to think I'm one of the young ones.
Yeah, you are, Chris. Yeah, you're up here with us. But I mean, you hear a wealth of information, of scientific information, and everything that I don't think filters through to all the the young guys on the farm who are out there slogging it out. The Deer Hub's great, but and the networking side of things, you got the Facebook page and the one conference a year. But outside of that, I think, and I don't have the answers, but if we could somehow filter through the information we learn here today, and also more networking amongst the young. I'm not sure how we do that, but it'd be quite a good way to do.
All good. Tell me you'll finish off and then we'll...
Yeah, well, just carrying on from that, I guess, like you're saying, it's about getting the young people involved with that information. But I think a lot of that's to do with like the regional workshops and the regional field days on farm. And I think a lot of the younger generation would relate a lot more to an on-farm learning experience than necessarily sitting up here and flicking through slides. I mean, they've either been through school or been through university, and they're out farming for a reason. They want to be out enjoying life. Well, not enjoying life, but they want to, they want to. They're obviously out there because they love what they like doing. So, and we're all each to our own, and we do what we want to do. But yeah, so I think the industry is doing it, but I think it's just puts back to the farm owners and the farm managers to actually try and involve their own staff and give them the opportunities. Like I've got the opportunity today myself to come and do this, and it's been great. And I've been getting a lot of opportunities recently to do this sort of thing, and you do grow a lot and learn a lot. So it's about filtering that on to the younger staff, or the next lot on.
All right, we might have to leave it there, but I think there's plenty for us all to think about. We can always do better than what we've been doing. I'd just like to thank the panel and James Pearce, Mark Tapley, Abby France, Brad Travis and Tim Turner. Thanks very much for you guys coming up here and doing that. It wasn't hard to get you to come up here. I thought I may have had to twist your arm a bit more. I will buy you a beer tonight though. Thank you.